This is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Part 1, Chapter 10. Large crowds began to gather on the village Ilo as soon as the edge had worn off the sun's heat and it was no longer painful on the body. Most communal ceremonies took place at that time of day, so that even when it was said that a ceremony would begin after midday meal, everyone understood that it would begin a long time later, when the sun's heat had softened. It was clear from the way the crowd stood or sat that the ceremony was for men. There were many women, but they looked on from the fringe like outsiders. The tilted men and elders sat on their stools, waiting for the trials to begin. In front of them was a row of stools on which nobody sat. There were 9 of them. 2 little groups of people stood at respectable distance beyond the stools. They faced the elders. There were 3 men in one group and 3 men and 1 woman in the other. The woman was Bafo, and the 3 men were her brothers. In the other group were her husband, Uzulu, and his relatives. Mgafo and her brothers were as still as statues in whose faces the artist had molded defiance. Uzulu and his relative, on the other hand, were whispering together. It looked like whispering, but they were really talking at the top of their voices. Everybody in the crowd was talking. It was like the market. From a distance the noise was a deep rumble carried by the wind. An iron gong sounded, setting a wave of expectation in the crowd. Everyone looked in the direction of the Iwujiwu house. Gome, 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 went the gong, and a powerful flute blew a high-pitched blast. Then came the voices of the Iwujiwu, guttural and awesome. The wave struck the woman and children, and there was a backward stampede, but it was momentary. They were already far enough where they stood, and there was room for running away if any of the Iwujiwu should go towards them. The drum sounded again, and the flute blew. The Iwujiwu house was now a pandemonium of quavering voices. Aru oyom di de filled the air as the spirits of the ancestors just emerged from the earth, greeting themselves in their esoteric language. The Iwujiwu house in which they emerged faced the forest, away from the crowd, who saw only its back with the many-colored patterns of drawings done by specifically chosen women at regular intervals. These women never saw the inside of the hut. No woman ever did, and they scrubbed and painted the outside walls under the supervision of men. If they imagined what was inside, they kept their imagination to themselves. No woman ever asked questions about the most powerful and the most secret cult in the clan. Aru oyom de flew around the dark, closed hut like tongues of fire. The ancestral spirits of the clan were abroad. The metal gong beat continuously now, and the flute, shrill and powerful, floated on the chaos. And then the Iwujiwu appeared. The women and children sent up a great shout and took to their heels. It was instinctive. A woman fled as soon as an Iwujiwu came in sight. And when, as one day, 9 of the greatest masked spirits in the clan came out together, it was a terrifying spectacle. Even Mbafo took to her heels and had to be restrained by her brothers. Each of the 9 Iwujiwu represented a village of the clan. Their leader was called Evil Forest. Smoke poured out of his head. The 9 villages of Umofia had grown out of the 9 sons of the first father of the clan. Evil Forest represented the village of Umuera, Umueru, for the children of Iru, who was the eldest of the 9 sons. Umofia Inu, shouted the leading Iwujiwu, pushing the air with his Rafi arms. The elders of the clan replied, "Yah! Umofia Inu! Yah! Umofia Inu! Yah!" Evil Forest then thrust the pointing end of his rattling staff into the earth, and it began to shake and rattle. like something agitating with a metallic life. He took the first of the empty stools, and the 8 other Iwujiu began to sit in the order of seniority after him. Okonkwo's wives, and perhaps the women as well, might have noticed that the second Iwujiu had the springy walk of Okonkwo, and they might also have noticed that Okonkwo was not among the titled men and elders who sat behind the row of Iwujiu. But if they thought that these things they kept within themselves. The Iwujiu with the springy walk was one of the dead fathers of the clan. He looked terrible and smoked raffia body, a huge wooden face painted white except with a round hollow eyes and charred teeth that were as big as a man's fingers. On his head were 2 powerful horns. When all the Iwujiu had sat down and the sound of the many tiny bells and rattles on their body had subsided, Evil Forest addressed the 2 groups of the people facing them. Uzulu's body, I salute you, he said. Spirits always addressed humans as bodies. Uzulu bent down and touched the earth with his right hand as a sign of submission. Our father, my hand has touched the ground, he said. Uzulu, body, do you hear me? Asked the spirit. How can I know you, father? You are beyond our knowledge. Evil Forest had turned to the other group and addressed the eldest of the 3 brothers. The body of Odukwe, I greet you, he said, and Odukwe bent down and touched the earth. The hearing then began. Ozulu stepped forward and presented his case, that a woman standing there is my wife, Ngbafo. I married her with my money and my yams. I do not owe in my laws anything. I owe them no yams. I owe them no cocoa yams. One morning 3 of them came to my house, beat me, took my wife and children away. This happened in the rainy season. I have waited in vain for my wife to return. At last I went to my in-laws and said to them, You have taken back your sister. I did not send her away. You yourselves took her. The law of the clan is that you should return to her bride price. But my wife's brothers said that they had nothing to tell me. So I have brought the matter to my fathers of the clan. My case is finished. I salute you. Your words are good, said the leader of Iwujiu. Let us hear from Odukwe. His words may also be good. Odukwe was short and thickest. He stepped forward, saluted the spirits, and began his story. My in-law has told you that we went to his house, beat him up, and took our sister and her children away, and that is true. He told you that he came to take her back her bride price and was refused to give it to him. That is also true. My in-law, Uzulu, is a beast. My sister lived with him for 9 years. During those years, no single day passed in the sky without his beating the woman. We tried to settle the quarrels time without number, and on each occasion, Uzulu was guilty. It is a lie, Uzulu shouted. 2 years ago, continued Odukwe, when she was pregnant, he beat her until she miscarried. It is a lie. She miscarried after she had gone to sleep with her lover. Ozulu, body, I salute you, said Evil Forest, silencing him. What kind of lover sleeps with a pregnant woman? There is a loud murmur of approbation from the crowd, the Odukwe continued. Last year, when my sister was recovering from an illness, he beat her again so that if the neighbors had not gone in to save her, she would have been killed. We heard of it, and did as you've been told. The law of Amofia is that if a woman runs away from her husband, her bride price is returned. But in this case, she ran away to save her life. Her 2 children belong to Uzulu. We do not dispute it, but they are too young to leave their mother. If, on the other hand, Ozulu should recover from his madness and come in the proper way to beg his wife to return, she will do so on the understanding that if he ever beats her again, we shall cut his genitals off for him. The crowd roared with laughter. Evil Force rose to the feet and order was immediately restored. A steady cloud of smoke rose from his head. He sat down again and called 2 witnesses. They were both the Zulu's neighbors, and they had agreed about the beating. Evil Force then stood up, pulled out his staff, and thrust it into the earth again. He ran a few steps in the direction of the woman. They all fled in terror, only to return to their places almost immediately. The 9 Iwujiu then went away to consult together in their house. They were silent for a long time. Then the metal gong sounded and the flute was blown. The Iwujiu had emerged once again from their underground home. They saluted one another and reappeared on the Ilo. Umofia Inu roared Evil Force, facing the elders and guardian and grandees of the clan. "Yah!" replied the thunderous crowd, and then silence descended from the sky and swallowed the noise. Evil Force began to speak, and all the while he spoke, everyone was silent. The 8 other Iwujiwu were as still as statues. "We have heard both sides of the case," said Evil Force. "Our duty is not to blame this man or to praise that, but to settle the dispute." He returned to Azulu's group and allowed a short pause. "Azulu's body, I salute you," he said. "Our father, my hand has touched the ground," replied Ozulu, touching the earth. "Azulu's body, do you hear me? How can I know you, father? You are beyond our knowledge." Ozulu replied, "I am Evil Force, and I kill a man on the day that his life is sweetest to him." "That is true," replied Ozulu. "Go to your in-law's house with a pot of wine and beg your wife to return you. It is not bravery when a man fights with a woman." He turned to Odukwe and allowed a brief pause. "Odukwe's body, I greet you," he said. "My hand is on the ground," replied Odukwe. "Do you know me?" "No man can know you," replied Odukwe. "I am an Evil Force. I am a dry meat that fills the mouth. I am a fire that burns without faggots. And if your in-laws bring wine to you, let your sister go with him. I salute you." He pulls his staff from the hard earth and thrust it back. "Umofia Inu," he roared. The crowd answered. "I do not know why such a trifle should come before the Iwujiwu," said one elder to another. "Don't you know that a man of Ozulu is? He will not listen to any other decision," replied the other. As they spoke, 2 other groups of the people had replaced the first before the Iwujiwu, and a great land case began.